many luscious sceneries, a lot of mountainous areas, a lot of fruit trees, a lot of rivers, a lot of animals, just running up and down and enjoying life. It was a wonderful experience, and I enjoyed my time there.
What was your family structure like? Did you have a lot of siblings, or was it more, experience in life with a lot of friends?
So I had a lot of cousins. I had a lot of cousins.
Okay.
I have, yeah. My mother has two of us, me and an older brother. My father has a few. I'm still we're still counting. Um, but myself and my brother and many cousins grew up, mostly boys, and so we would have a lot of fun. We could do a lot of things together. If it was fights, we had a large crew, so we could hold our own in a fight.
Okay. Okay. It
And
sounds
if it
it
is
sounds
fun,
like
we had enough people to play
games right
football,
there.
cricket. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you played football, you played cricket, a lot of sporting activities with your family members as well.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I wasn't very sport oriented in terms of giftedness,
Okay.
and I never had much patience for like football. But I loved cricket. I loved like volleyball. My brother was into all sorts of sports, so he would teach us to play table tennis and every sport that he was a part of, participating in. We would also get a chance to participate in those, even if not officially. He would make sure that we're exposed to those
Okay.
sorts of sports.
Okay. Awesome. What was school like for you?
Yes.
Both primary and high school. What were some of the standout experiences for you?
Well, I think if you ask most teachers in school in my formative years, even through a major part of high school, is that I'm remembered as someone who gave a lot of trouble. I
Oh.
was always getting into trouble. Yes, I was always getting into fights. Um, for them, I was just a bad boy. I was just a bad influence on the school, bad influence on
Mm,
other students, you know, leading gangs and stuff like those.
thanks.
I was just bad news. Yeah,
No,
I was
man.
just bad
I
news.
want everybody to go online. We're live on Facebook and YouTube. And I want you to look at him and tell me if you'd ever imagine him leading a gang. I am absolutely shocked. So, where did the transformation take place?
The transformation took place when I was 16 years old. I got into trouble when I was like 15. I got into some serious trouble with the law. I was accused of carnal abuse, something I never did. But
Mm,
the evidence, yeah, the evidence seemingly were piled up against me,
wow.
particularly because of my past experiences where school is concerned. In school, I gave a lot of trouble, so I'd get suspensions and stuff. The last thing that had happened is that I had gotten a 5-day suspension for beating up a girl badly, and when the courts went back to the school to do the background check, those things came up.
Mm,
The fact that those who accused me, when they confronted me, rather than running, because I was staying at their house when the whole thing happened, rather than running, I took up a machete to defend myself because it was many of them and only me. And so the judge was saying that why didn't I run? Why did I have to take up a machete to defend myself? I should have run and all these sorts of stuff. So all these things came back at me. I never felt like I had a good representation in terms of a defense. So I ended up getting 3 years probation. I was found guilty. Other issues complicated the matter because they were saying that my mother had threatened them that if I get any sentence, then she would make sure that bad things happen to them. And so she
mm,
was being tried, and these things were happening at the same time. So I was placed on probation. When I was 10 years old, I wanted to be a Christian, but the pastor said that I was the only person, and he never baptized me.
Oh.
By the time I got to 14, I was into Rastafarianism. You know,
Yeah?
I started smoking. Yeah, man, started smoking the wisdom weed and all these sorts of stuff. And I was reading up on Africa, Ethiopia, only reading from the
Oh.
Psalms and all these sorts of stuff. And then now, so when this whole thing happened, the church came back and started to say, hey, remember you wanted to be baptized a few years ago. So why not do it now? For me, this was a good opportunity because I was planning a mass murder. I was planning to kill about 13 people. Everybody was involved in the situation. All of them were going to die. I had some friends in
Wow.
Rivali and I called them up and tell them that we need to rise the machine, have some skull to crack.
Wow.
And
So where
everybody
did you
was
get this
ready,
friend in
everything
Rivoli?
was set. And
Where
so
did this
I
we're
got
still living in St. Mary at this time?
yeah, I was still living in St. Mary.
So you got all those friends in Rivoli?
But I had friends, some of them came from St. Mary because a lot of people from St. Mary would move to Kingston, to Tivoli, So I had friends and I had friends who had friends. And so,
Oh.
I mean, when you want to do evil, the
Yes.
network can be so, yeah, it can spread, easily. So, so I decided I was going to get baptized, but I wanted to get baptized so that I could stay in the church and commit my carry out my acts of revenge.
Pastor Meek,
I
you
was like,
serious?
if I go into the church, nobody's going to suspect me. So why not give it a try? So
Wow.
that was the motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the transformation now came. My mother, I'd never seen her attend church. In my 16 years, she had never attended church. She would make sure you attend church. She would send her offering on her tithe. She would, bake and do whatever the church needed, but she would never attend church. But during this period, my mother started to pray and, she found God, or God found her.
Yeah.
Um, and there was a transformation there. So we decided we were going to get baptized and stuff. And at the day of the baptism, some persons said I wouldn't last 3 months. Some persons said I wouldn't last 3 weeks. And that was it for me. Nothing extraordinary took place. That was it.
That
Um,
was it.
because I was determined in my life that, yeah. Just a challenge. If you make a challenge to me, I will live the rest of my life. I will die trying to prove you wrong. And so 2 days later, I started to read my Bible. I read the first um, 5 books of the Bible in 1 month. I read Genesis in
Mhm.
8 days, for the first 5 books in a month. By the time 3 months later, I was into Chronicles. But then the names got me, discouraged because I couldn't call them. I never understood what the genealogies meant and so forth and so on. I'm kind of reading the Bible and committing myself to that process. I began to experience, transformation along with my
Wow.
grandmother, because my grandmother was a very important person in my life. She helped to shape me and to mold me and to keep me on the right path. So those experiences are what led me to continuing in Christianity, and then along the way, other experiences that I consider abnormal, or a sort of supernatural experience that really determined that Christ had called me to what I
Tell us
am
about
now
some of those
embarking on.
experiences, the abnormal, supernatural, amazing stories you have.
All right, so I'm from a Pentecostal background, right? I was brought up in the New Testament Church of God, and I have always been very skeptical. I've always been a thinking person. I've always
Mm-hmm.
asked a lot of questions. I saw people, saying that they were in the spirit and that they were speaking in tongues, and all these things were happening. And I was like, are these things real? You know,
Yeah.
I don't think that these things are real. These things don't. These people are putting on a show.
Oh, okay.
And one night I went like about 2 years into into Christianity. I went to this particular function on a Monday evening, and my grandmother literally forced me. I was depressed. I was stressed. I was frustrated. Um, I just felt lost to a certain extent. And our choir was supposed to sing youth choir, and I said I wasn't going to go. And my grandmother talked me into going. If anybody can talk me into doing anything at all, it was my
Your
grandmother.
grandmother.
So she said, "Yes, man." So she said, "I need to go." So I said, "Okay, mama." Um, and I went, and then they were calling up people. There was an altar call. People were coming up, and as people came up, they were laying hands on them, and people were, falling and stuff, and some were bursting out. But some of them were there were like spectators. They were there, but it's like they were just there for show. And I
Mm-hmm.
sat there and I said, God, if this thing is real, I'm challenging you tonight. If this thing is real, I need to experience it. You need to
Mm,
prove to me that this, because if you prove to me that this thing is real, then this is it. And they were calling for others, and I took off my watch. I went up. I said, I'm going up. I took off my watch, gave it to my grandmother. I think I had on my chain. I took it off and stuff, and I went up, and people were lingering. And so I said, "Excuse me." I parted to the crowd, and I went up. The lady said, "Put your hands in the air and begin to shout Jesus." I did that, and the rest is history. I started to speak in tongues, and I started to feel different, like an out of body
mm,
experience. And I spoke in tongues for about 5 hours, literally.
that night.
Um, yes, 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 that was the experience,
Wow.
and I just couldn't stop. I just couldn't stop. I remember clearly I was going home on the back of an open van, and persons were like, hold him, and lest he falls off and all those sort of stuff. And I remember I said to them that I am very conscious of what is happening. I
Mm-hmm.
am not I, unconscious, and so you don't need to hold me. Nothing will happen to me. And I went home, and when I went home, I had some cousins who were not Christians. I laid my hands on them, and they started to move in the spirit.
What you saying to me? What
Yeah,
you saying to me? So from
yeah,
one
and it
night
was
being
no,
skeptic
it was
5 hours earlier, and now you're laying hands
yeah,
like man.
yeah, 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 yeah. I was at the time I was 18 years old. Yeah, I was 18 years old at the time, and I committed my life to the Lord. I told him, I said, this is the path you've called me on. This is what you've called me to. And it doesn't matter where, if this is what is going to take my life, then fine, I'll die for you. Wherever you
Mm,
want me to go. If
wow.
Afghanistan, I'll go. If it's Iraq, I'll go. It doesn't really matter. My life is yours. And out of that, I started to have some unusual experiences where I just feel like I want to preach. And I began preaching a little before when I was 17, but
Yeah.
nothing serious. But
Mm-hmm.
I started to have this unction for preaching, and I would be sleeping, and I'd be dreaming that I'm preaching, and I'd be
Oh.
walking on the streets, and I'm preaching to myself, and it was just uncontrollable, unbearable, and people felt like I was going crazy to a certain extent.
Mm,
Sometimes how the whole thing was happening. Yeah, I just wanted to preach. I just preach. I just preach.
wow.
And out of that, I started to preach. When I was 18, I took on preaching full time. The plan before that was to go to university to get a degree in engineering and mathematics and become a professor of mathematics and stuff.
Oh, that
I
was
was
your
still
goal.
saying, well, God, even if you want me to do this, there are some things that, yeah, that was my goal. In the initial stages, before I became a Christian, the purpose behind that was that I wanted to become a hitman, but I wanted to be a brilliant hitman, who would, yes, man, a hitman. And I wanted to kill people for a living, but I wanted to kill people internationally. And the plan was to become an engineer and a mathematician, and to make my own guns and stuff. I had this thing by that at this time the 9/11 incident had just taken place, and so had metal detectors. So I envisioned that, hey, I have to get like probably fiberglass to use make the guns, and something like silicone to use make the bullets, and go to something innovative so I can bring it through, disassemble it and
Mm,
bring it through so that it won't be detected. So I had all those, fancy plans, but God had something else in mind,
wow.
and
Wow.
here I am today.
This is really amazing. Absolutely amazing. To hear the transformation. Some persons on the chat are saying, I can't believe you look so innocent. But that is just the transformation that God has done in your own life. Amazing.
Yes,
Wow.
yes,
Tell us now. I mean,
yeah. So
so you had gotten saved about 15, 16 thereabout. You're still in school.
yeah,
What
16.
are the change in your
Yeah.
academic and your scholastic endeavors?
All right. So from day one, even as a bad boy in school, I was always doing well
Oh, okay.
because education was important to my family. That was important. There was no going around that, and my brother had set a very high standard, for which I had to follow through on. Apart from that, as I thought about the criminal world and I looked at how people were being treated by the police officers, I figured that if I am going to become a criminal myself, I must be an intelligent criminal. So I can't wear pants at my way, down at my bottom. I have to be well groomed. I have to be well spoken because if I need to make an appearance in court, I should be able to defend myself and give good representation. So all those things motivated me academically. And I mean, but when I became a Christian now, it 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 became different because the motive for learning was now different. And I now moved from being a don to being a motivation to my peers. I was still the don, I was still the Christian don because that boy element was still there.
Wow.
But I now started to motivate my peers, and I said to them, hey, even if you're gonna be a bad man still, you need to have some subject
Bad man
because
and subject.
yeah, you need to have some subject. But the whole idea behind it is that after they became educated, they would not necessarily want to become criminals anymore.
Yeah.
The hope behind it. And so I'd spend time with them after school. I'd help them with mathematics and whatever else I could help with. And I'd motivate them, made sure that they got their work done, and just maintain positive influence in their lives. And and,
Wow.
and to this day, majority of them have turned out well.
Wow. Absolutely amazing. So you
Yeah.
became head boy. I understand.
Yeah. I became head boy, and funny enough, that school, St. Mary Technical High School, the judge had ordered that I be transferred from the school because the judge said
Okay.
that by virtue of what they sent to the reports that they sent, it is obvious that those in authority at the time had something personal against me, because even if I did that, the kind of report, was very strongly against me.
Mm-hmm.
And considering I was a teenager, they were figuring that I was at a disadvantage. But I told the probation officer that I am not going to leave. That I'm going to stay there and I'm going to prove them wrong. So
Wow.
my mother wanted me to become a head boy. My mother say, boy, I want you to become head boy. But at the time my mother said it, I was like, boy, who me ever know this thing now go work, you know? But when I became a Christian, yeah, because there were so many things working against me at the school. There was one time when they asked me to take my parents because I had gotten into trouble. And
Yeah.
I brought a friend,
You
and
are
told him he
really
was my older brother.
You brought a friend.
So yeah, man, I brought a friend, man, and we had the thing, planned out properly and all figured out. And he came and gave a great speech and all of that, you know. but they never accepted it. They rejected it. They said, "Boy, we still need a parent.
Okay.
we need a parent." Yeah, so I was for quite a while. I was a wanted person on the school compound. I still go. I still attend classes, but I was a wanted person. So when I became saved and the transformations started taking place, they approached me to be a prefect. They came to me and they said to me that, "Hey, we recognize that you have made drastic changes to your life, and we want to nominate you for prefect." And he said, "Okay, this gets me one step closer to mommy's dream, so jump
Okay.
on it." And then when the position for head boy came up, nobody challenged me. Nobody challenged me because they
Nobody.
figured that, hey, yeah, nobody. They figured he's going to win anyway, so let's just leave it there.
The
Um,
done.
and
The
automatically
done.
fell into the position. I just fell into the position. So
Wow.
that is what it is. Yeah, man. When I was graduating, I got an award for being the most involved student in the life of the school. Because as a head boy, I would get my friends and would clean up the school in a rubbish, and you have these many floors, and students would throw rubbish around the back, and we'd go and clean off the back porches and make the school look lovely and nice and stuff, and just nice of the place. So yeah,
Wow. Powerful, powerful transformation. And normally, I'm just being honest, many individuals expect such a transformation from an individual who had some, near death encounter or, seeing Jesus in a dream, that kind of testimony. But just
yeah,
by virtue of
right,
you
right.
being saved, we're wanting to prove some person's wrong, and you read in the word, the transformation started to take place.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely.
And
And
that
then
for
and
me
then two
shows the
years
power
later, when
of
I had
the word
that
of God in
experience.
bringing change.
Yeah, man, definitely, definitely. I think if God's word is read with the right motive, then very very serious transformation can take place.
Wow. Powerful, powerful. Tell us though about, you got saved with a mass murderous intent on your heart. When did you find
Yeah.
that drive lift from your heart, from your desires?
Well, that never took long, in terms of I think how the world change took place where that is concerned is one day I sat down and my mother. I don't think I was baptized yet. I think this is getting close to the time when I was going to be baptized. My mother now, having had, she wasn't baptized yet, but she had the supernatural encounter with God,
Tell us about that.
and she was now getting revelation. So she sat in the living room one day, and she was just praying, and the spirit of God just came over her, just took control of her, took possession of her, and she started speaking in other languages. She had not gone to a church.
Yeah.
Nothing like that had taken place. As I said, she went into church. This was just her, you know, praying and reading her Bible and just talking to God. And that was how her transformation took place. And out of this, she got closer to God. She decided she wanted to be baptized. The church that my grandmother went, it became our church. They were dragging their feet. She said, "Look here, if you don't want to baptize me, I'm going to go somewhere else because I am ready,"
Yeah.
and stuff. Out of this, she would have routine, daily routine prayers. And one day she was praying, and as she was praying, she came over to me and she told me, because I was planning to kill my father in the midst of everybody else as well, because there was a
Oh.
long time grudge brewing there. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and then I figured that, hey, to kill my father, I have to kill my uncle because my father and my uncle lives together, and my uncle has a license firearm, so I have to kill him first and then kill my father, to prevent
Mm-mm.
me losing my life. So everything was worked out, and I sat on all these ideas, not saying anything to anybody. So I knew nobody could tell her that I was planning these things. because the friends who knew about some of these things, they never knew the extent, they never knew some of the victims, they never knew who the victims were going to be. They just knew that we had this job that we were going to undertake and that
Yeah.
people were going to dead, and that was enough for them. So here I was on the veranda. My mother is in the living room. She's praying. I am just carefree throughout the whole thing. My grandmother was like, "You don't have a care in the world. You know, you may go to prison, and it is as if you are not concerned about anything at all." But I'm not concerned because I'm satisfied that at the end of the day, I am going to get my revenge.
Oh.
So it really doesn't matter what happens because I'm going to get my revenge. By this time, I was in and out of lockup. You know, I had gone to the Stony Remand Center, been there for 5 days, 6 days. You know, when I went to court, I'd be locked up in the jail cell at the Spanish Town, RM down at the bottom there with other, men, adult men, and all these sorts
Mm.
of stuff. So a lot of rough experiences, but those things only motivated me more and made me harder. So here I was sitting down thinking about this whole thing. She was there praying. I wasn't paying attention to that. And she came over to me and she said to me, "The Lord said to tell you that whatever you plan to do to your father, you mustn't do it. You must forgive him and leave it alone."
Wow.
And I'm like, okay. Yeah, this was shocking because nobody knew that I was planning anything. And so my grandmother, being the person who can get anything out of me when nobody else can, came and she called me Meek, or she called me Franco. She said, "Franco, we are planning for your father now." And I said, "Mama, I murder me, I plan for murder that,
Mm.
you know.
She was
And
shocked.
she started, yeah, man, she started crying and she started praising God and, she started praying and everything in one. But that experience kind of shifted my focus and I started to grapple with the issue of forgiveness and stuff. When I became a Christian, um, I knew that I had to forgive,
Yeah.
but where he's concerned in particular, I began to think that God, even if I can't kill him, you are God, you can still kill him. So he has a
Mm. So
bike.
revenge took a different angle now.
Yes, man. So he had a bike at the time, and I said, God, there's this place called Coffee Gully. He had a trail bike, and there was a deep precipice down at the bottom. Some rocks on the top there. And I said to him, when he's passing that place, just make the bike run over the gully with him, over the precipice with him, and just broke him neck. And that's it. You are God. End of story. You
Mm.
know. So that continued for a while, even after I became a Christian. That continued for a while. But as I read the word more, and as I began to pray more and to fast more, and to learn more about what Christ requires of me, I realized that that is not a path that would have been profitable for me. That would have only made me bitter. It would
Yeah.
affect me. It weighed me down. It made my throat sore sometimes. It just made life unbearable. And
Oh
so I
wow.
had to now turn things to God. I had to now give all of that to God. Because at the end of the day, it is my prerogative to forgive him. But me forgiving him does not necessarily mean that he would not pay for whatever I think he needs to pay for. He has to deal with his own issue of forgiveness where God is concerned.
Yeah.
So me forgiving him sets me free, but it doesn't necessarily set him free because he has to deal with his own issue of forgiveness. Still has to make amends um, for his own way. So, that was how I began to heal from that. For the others who had done me wrong, within about a year, 2 years, on the same date, like I was locked up. I was locked up on January 5th, um, 2000 2002, and on January 6th, 2003, 2004, the people who told lies on me,
Yeah.
they had a son who was locked up and charged for rape.
Oh my.
Yeah, and so you know that was not difficult to let go of because I figured, okay, God, you are working
You're
on it.
on this one.
Yeah, so yeah, and then they had some other encounters as well that made matters worse for them. Some other family members had to run away for rape charges and all
Mm,
sorts of stuff. So yeah, so yeah, but ultimately, I mean, I had to confront my own issues. I had to deal with my own issues.
yeah. What's the relationship
Mm.
with your father now? Is it mended? What's the type of relationship you have with your father now?
Yeah, honestly, if I'm going to be candid with you, we haven't spoken in a while, but I've gotten past that, and we are okay. We just don't have a talking relationship like
I
get up
get you.
and call every day
I
and
get
talk
you.
and so forth. But I have nothing against him. I love him, and if he needs any help, I'm there for him. I figure at some point in the future, I'm his first son, so I figure at some point in the future, he may need someone to take care of him, and I may have to step up to that. However that works. But I mean, I have no issues there.
You have a unique
Yes.
story because you were rescued from the cusp, I would say, of the criminal underworld because right when you had every reason to delve in it, as I believe Satan was just priming you all along to use you in that, God would have snatched you. So I would think that you understand how much of the individuals that are committing the heinous crimes that we see now think.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I do understand, and the truth about it is, as a part of my ministry, I've been able to have unique relationships with these kinds of people.
Mm,
Um, it's not difficult for me to interact with them
yeah.
and to hear their stories, and they'll open up and they'll share stuff, and stuff. So yeah, yeah. I love to go into the ghettos and to preach, in open air and the tents and just interacting with the unsafe community. That is what I
Any
love.
particular story comes to mind when you went when you shared your story? What was the response that some of them shared or said?
Well, I've had cases where, I mean, there have been transformations. There have been serious transformations. People have testified about, you know, um, having plans to commit murders and all those sorts of stuff. And just by hearing me and hearing my testimony, it drove them to a place where they wanted to reconsider and they wanted to talk to me. So I've had those sorts of experiences. They've confided in me. People have shared their experiences with, shootings and being shot, being in gangs, and all these sorts of stuff. I've had a case where I've been preaching and people are like gunmen. They are about their own business, and they draw close to the church and they say, "Boy, Pastor, we have to come listen to you because thing them you talk, them no normal, and you are not
Mm,
like the normal
yeah.
pastor we used to." Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because my prerogative or my duty isn't to condemn anybody. It is to build a relationship with people, whether they are saved or unsaved, and to model Christ so that they know that they are loved by him and that they can be transformed by him as well.
Wow. Powerful. I mean, I have at a maximum 5 minutes to talk with you. So, I like to set the stage for a part two from early, but because, we haven't gone into anything, how you got the call to ministry, what ministry has been. We haven't really gone into any of that. We've really
Yeah.
delved into an area I've never before been brought in an interview and hear all of this. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Now, when I want to find out from you because I heard of your grandmother's response. When your mother found out what you were planning
Right.
to do, what did she say?
I mean, she was lost for words, you know. But I think mostly she was just overjoyed that the transformation took place in her life at the time that it did, so that the Lord could have used her as a vessel, to not just save others, but to save me as well.
Yeah.
Because there's no telling what would have happened, had I gone down that particular path.
Your cousins, you mentioned earlier about, you going home laying hands. They got saved as well. How did they respond to that moment?
Yes. Yeah, so one of them eventually got into church, and he was very serious about it. He has backslidden now. I mean, at least three of them became Christians and became
Mm,
active Christians as well. Yes, but sometimes somewhere along the way, people become
yeah,
distracted with other things,
yeah, yeah.
and okay, one of them has started to rekindle her relationship with Christ. So I'm hoping for great things there. But still
Amazing.
trusting the Lord. But there's another side to my family as well, that makes life difficult. And you talk about part two, you may need a part three as well, because there are so many other things, aspects of my life that have shaped me, that
Yeah.
I'm not embarrassed about them, because they are what makes me who I am today. So my grandfather, my grandmother's husband, he was a practicing Obeah man. He was a serious Obeah man. Right? That
Mm,
was his profession. Yeah, he that was handed down to him from his father, who was also a very serious Obeah man. My grandfather was so good at what he did that his nickname was Obeah.
mm.
Right? So it wasn't any joking kind of thing. So when he died, two of my uncles and one of my aunt took on that sort of thing. One of my uncles died. I baptized my aunt about 4 years ago, 3, 4 years ago. She's still a Christian now, and my other uncle still carries on that heritage. But there was this aspect of life that was pulling my other cousins as well.
Oh,
So they got into that sort of thing, and that made the water very murky, because
can
those sorts
imagine.
of things are very contagious and very catchy, and are sometimes difficult to pull away from.
Wow.
So,
Well,
so
well,
there's the aspect
we
of
know
my
we
family
know where we
as well.
can pick up part two from because this is a very amazing story. Francois Meek, pastor there at the Redeemed Deliverance Church of God. I'm sharing his testimony as we are in behind the pulpit, a testimony of God rescuing him from entering in a life of revenge and murder and really being used of the enemy. And now he's used of God to bring the message of salvation, a powerful testimony. And, implicit in his statement is that he's ready for even a part three. So hopefully we can get that going next week. We're out of time in this segment, and I mean we're even over time. So when I say out of time, we're out of time. But thank you so much for sharing so candidly. I'm sure it's been a blessing. So many persons saying, what God not what not done, not dash way. And I mean, God has purpose for everybody, and you're certainly an example of that. Thank you for being so candid. Really appreciate that.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And thank you for
All
having
right.
me.
So
And I mean, I'm happy to return and to share with you whatever I can.
yeah, man. God bless you. Take care. Let's look forward to part two. All right, as we keep connected. God bless you.
Sure, sure, definitely. Blessings to you too.
All right. All right. Awesome. Wow. Wow. That no. Listen to me. You are behind the pulpit and you are behind the pulpit. I mean, you are behind the pulpit and you are behind the pulpit, and that's one of the behind the pulpit. Wow. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.